Dystopia Tonight. Dystopia Tonight.
I'm going to share the video so you can see exactly what John was talking about, Heather, so you guys can discuss it a little bit. So let's share this real fast.
And this is the same guy that just passed this fucking law in New York City where you have to have a vaccine passport to go everywhere. You have to have a vaccine to go to a restaurant, to a gym, to any place where people gather. It is crazy. And meanwhile, the biggest percentage of people that don't have vaccines or have been vaccinated are people of color. So this guy, people of color and immigrants, this is what he's always supposed to be pro people of color, pro diversity.
Can you pause that for a minute?
Those are the people that don't have vaccines, and now you're precluded.
So this is something that I've been getting online ever since because every time I post something about people need to get the vaccines or whatever, I've had like MAGA morons. I guess they must have gotten it from him because this part of it I didn't hear. Literally calling me a racist because they're like white dudes calling me a racist. And in like a reverse kind of way, like, oh, I thought you were pro BLM and I thought you were whatever. And the majority of people that aren't getting it are black people. And you're being racist right now for whatever. Now I know where they got it from because that's what I've been getting online.
Yeah, that's such a conflation of the situation because, I mean, it's multifaceted why people of color aren't getting it. And you could speak to, the institutional racism. You could speak to fears of medical field. You could speak to access issues. There's lots of reasons you could say, but kind of what you can't say is that you're then a racist for wanting individuals to get vaccinated so that they won't die or pass on to their children. It's just such a conflation of a couple of issues. So the notion that somehow you're racist because you're pointing out the fact that people of color are not getting the vaccine for a variety of reasons it's just conflating things that don't need to be conflated.
Including them from going to gyms and restaurants. And what about the people working in the restaurants? What about all this? It's fucking madness. And then
right. So the next part of that argument is you, John, you would be a racist because if you believe in the vaccine passports and stopping people from going places, then since so many minorities are not vaccinated relative to other people, that's the racist part, that you're trying to stop black people from going to gyms.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's what the fucking I can't even believe he fucking said that shit.
Yeah.
He's I think he's a little bit better than that most of the time. I don't know what his problem is now.
You have a bunch of people that are supporting it, like, yay, finally. Meanwhile, you have science is coming out. There's legitimate articles. Jamie, I'll send this to you now. There's legitimate because doctors have been sending me these things. And, this is neither pro nor con vaccine. This is not a judgment statement, but imperfect vaccination can enhance the transmission of highly virulent pathogens.
Right.
So this is a scientific paper from 2015.
Okay.
That shows.
Wait.
Look, and I mean another problem. So, like a 6-year-old paper, not about this vaccination, having nothing to do with COVID, but
vaccines that keep the host alive but still allow transmission can thus allow virulent strains to circulate in a population. So vaccines that don't kill the virus, vaccines that allow people, like this is one of the things we're finding out about what they're calling breakthrough cases.
Right.
So people who are vaccinated can still get COVID and they can still transmit COVID.
Mm-hmm. Here's my question.
Recently happened at the Comedy Store. Okay, a vaccinated comedian gave.
Okay. Vaccines don't kill don't kill viruses, right? They just make you, I don't know. From what I understand is vaccines don't actually kill a virus. right?
Yeah, so so there's different kinds of vaccines, right? Different vaccines do different things. In the case of COVID, the real breakthrough for COVID is that we're using these mRNA vaccines. So the mRNA vaccines, they actually identify a specific part of the COVID virus. So they're not even identifying the whole thing. They're identifying a part of the COVID virus. Um, there's a really great video that was done by somebody at NPR, and I call it Four Cans. And I think we showed it on our show, Tom. It's basically this guy who,
Yes.
like, he has these fork cans.
You need to make this. What is it? It's a part of a virus. A virus? Just a part of it, not the actual virus. They're called COVID-19. They have fork hands and they're coming. Fork hands? Please. What is this? This messenger told me to make them. I've never seen these before. I'll make some new antibodies to get rid of them. Seize the forks. Nice body. Gonna make this place my new home. Fork hands. Seize them.
Basically the vaccine is noting, the mRNA vaccine is noting a portion of the virus that it recognizes, and then essentially it somewhat neutralizes it, but it's not necessarily killing off the entire virus. It's making it so that you are not having as much of a reaction to the virus as you might if it didn't recognize the fork hands, for example.
Right.
And then obviously over time, your immune system has other memory cells, T cells are an example, where the body then starts to recognize the fork hands more and more. And eventually it attacks the virus and goes after it. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have any trace of COVID. It just means that your viral load, or what is left there, is not going to be enough to do much of anything, and it's not going to be enough to transmit the disease to somebody else. But as to, is it obliterating COVID, or is it making it so that you can't transmit it? Well, I think that's one of the misnomers, but the answer is no, it's not. So there's
COVID to like 12 different fucking people at the Comedy Store. Some of them vaccinated, some of them not. That situation where the vaccine just kind of protects you from serious damage,
right?
But it protects you from really being like badly hospitalized or death, but doesn't stop you from getting the virus, can possibly lead to more potent viruses. So these people that are saying, oh, it's these unvaccinated people that are responsible for the variants. Well, there's actually scientific papers that point to the very sort of environment that we're creating by having so many people vaccinated with a vaccine that doesn't kill off the virus. It actually can lead to more potent viruses.
That sounds like such complete and total fucking horseshit. And also, just want to note here
Come on in.
that he's talking to, who the fuck is this guy?
I'm Dr. Nate Savine.
Other than Doc.
I was going to say, the dude he's talking to is like a conservative, like right-wing gun nut, NRA, a little too close. NRA. Was frightening for a half a second there. NRA, guy who owns a coffee shop. So, like, obviously, like, he's pandering to this dude that's on, they're both having a conservative hand job fest over there. But other than that, that sounds like complete and total bullshit to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess what he's trying to say, but it's so okay. So the point I think he's trying to make is that even if you're vaccinated, you can have, and again, there's a difference between the being infected with the virus and having the full-blown disease, right? So there's the virus, and then there's COVID, the disease, right?
Yeah.
So he's also kind of conflating those things, because he's essentially saying, you know, being infected with the virus is the same thing as having the disease.
Right.
When it's not. But so then essentially what he's saying is, if you have gotten vaccinated, it's no different really than if you're not vaccinated, because you can still transmit the disease to others, and you are a vector for variants. The only problem with that is the individuals who we see more likely to be the inceptors of the variant are, one, immunocompromised people who carry COVID, the disease, for like months. So these people who have COVID for like 100 days, 120 days, and then they cycle through COVID to the point where they themselves produce variants. So you have those people.
Right.
And then people who have not been vaccinated, because they end up also having a longer trajectory, a longer illness, a stronger response, and you see them also coming up with variants. Now, can somebody who is vaccinated be the inceptor of a variant? But sure, they could. But they're not gonna have the disease process the way somebody who is not vaccinated is gonna have it. So you wouldn't anticipate in large numbers that people who are vaccinated are going to be transmitting the disease in the same way that people who are not vaccinated. That's how we see variants happening. And then you wouldn't anticipate that they're gonna have the level of response such that we would see a long-term disease where you might have somebody that would produce several variants, if not many, many variants.
Right.
So it's all, that's the fourth less accurate thing he said.
PhDs sending me these things, guys who won't speak about it publicly because they're worried about the blowback. People who are physicians, people who are even epidemiologists, even people that deal with diseases and viruses, they're concerned, and they don't want to talk about it publicly because people call them anti-vaxxers.
Oh, yeah.
It's really wild out there.
Oh, it's wild because they've somehow managed, and when I say they, meaning the political elite, and then I think their established media representatives, have somehow managed to turn this into a political issue, right? And
first of all,
that's dangerous.
The only people that turned it into a political issue was fucking Trump for the last 4 years. It's the only anybody that politicized this fucking shit. It started with him, and then it made it so that it was worse for everybody else moving forward. That's just something I want to get out there real quick. Because that's insane that now they're trying to twist it like, oh, you know, the political elite made it into a political issue. No, the only one that made it into a political issue was the fucking moron that was in office for 4 years and the one who caused the spread.
Yeah, the environment was such that it was kind of ripe for what then happened with COVID. So the stage was set, and then, you know, we as a country just kind of like ended up going down that road. So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I want to say it's, you know, it's not that he's, I mean, you know, I've seen other videos of his, and he's actually a compelling person around. Like, he's really interesting to listen to.
Rogan.
It's not that he's so, and I think maybe that's part of the problem too. It's part of the issue is he's not wildly off base, but he's saying enough things that are meshed with each other that if somebody repeats this or takes it as the truth, then they're going to be under certain misconceptions that are not going to be helpful for them in terms of wanting to get the vaccine.
That's my main problem with it.
Look at the vaccine.
Yeah, that's my main problem with it too. I've never had I mean, I like Joe Rogan. I met him. He's a nice guy. I like his show. He's always got good conversations and stuff. Just felt like this in this particular instance where it's like, you know, even if it's half truths to a certain extent, you're like, holy fucking shit. Like, a lot of what he's saying is not either enough of the information we're getting, or he's assuming things that aren't actually true. Right.
And in this environment where, as he said in the beginning, you've got, large swaths of, the minority population that's not getting vaccinated. People don't need more of an incentive to not get vaccinated.
Exactly.
Play in that game where they're using something as meaningful and quite possibly dangerous for the country as political posturing or virtue signaling, right? And you see it all the time because you see these guys are wearing their masks for the camera, but then they take them off.
AOC just got busted doing that yesterday. You see the video?
Yeah,
she
of course.
Had no mask on, hanging out with everybody, and then they go to take a picture.
Yeah.
She puts the mask on and then takes it off after the picture's done.
There's another thing too, though. You wouldn't need they wouldn't need to do that. They wouldn't need to do that kind of shit if people in this country weren't so fucking stupid. Like the only reason why we have to do the political theater with the masks and shit like that, even to celebrities to a certain extent, is because people do not understand when they should take it off, when they can take it off. Like using their own discretion at this point in time. We've already seen that they can't use their own discretion just by the way the variants have spread and just by the way people are getting COVID left and right based on bullshit theories. So yeah, if the only way to do it is to possibly set some kind of bizarre political example of it, which I'm not a fan of. I know most of it's bullshit. Like all that shit with Gavin Newsom, and then he went out with his family and they were like, oh, we're supposed to stay in, but he can't, which I get that's elitism to a certain extent. But sorry, do I trust Gavin and his, socially distant rich family more than I trust some fucking, hillbilly in Huntington Beach? Yeah, I do. Because I and then they want him gone. It's insane. I understand it's not fair and whatever, but also like I understand why it's not that big of a deal.
How about Obama?
Yeah, Obama's having that 700 guest party or whatever.
He's gonna tone it down to 600.
Yeah,
because of the pandemic. He's gonna make it a little lighter.
But you can't go to a gym in New York.
Right.
Unless you have a vaccination card, or you can't go out to eat. We're going to shut down small businesses. You can't go to a comedy club. And I think it's rules for thee and not for me.
I was
scenario. And people read right through that shit because some people I think even
are applauding it, which is fucking terrifying. I know smart people that are applauding it. It's so strange. And the problem with applauding vaccine passports, this is part of the problem. They are not going to give that power up.
No,
they're not going to. They're going to find a reason to continue to use that. If they can figure out a way to force you into carrying papers, into carrying something that lets you enter businesses or lets you do this or lets businesses open, as soon as you give politicians power,
you mean like a driver's license
didn't exist previously. Historically, they don't relinquish that power. They find new reasons to use it.
Well, I think that's
they check
the
ID for teens at bars
and political power.
An age passport,
and I think that's why I tend to be bucketed in conservatives because it means smaller government to me. Right? There's multiple reasons why people classify themselves as that, but I look at things and I look at the preservation of individual liberty. How do I preserve more of my freedom because I feel like I'm a responsible adult and I feel like I'm going to raise responsible adults and I feel like I spend most of my time around responsible adults. It's such a disconnect in individual philosophy when I find people that are actively looking for ways that they can forfeit their individual liberty and hand it over to somebody where they feel like they have a better interest in running their life than they do.
Again.
And I understand the balance between.
See, this is the insanity there though too, because they're not looking at it from the window of when COVID started to now. Like there's a cause and effect to where we got ourselves here. And even if now they feel like momentarily they may be right that individual liberty is being, forfeited or threatened. Well, there's a fucking reason now. And the reason is, that these people didn't do what needed to be done. We never had a full lockdown. We had morons protesting and masks and shit like that. We had people who didn't believe in it, people who remained open during it, people who went to beach parties, and we had Florida. Let's just fucking leave it at we had Florida. And now that's the result of it. It's not some giant plot that's been going on for forever to do that kind of shit. It's like, look, no one's doing what they need to be doing. If everybody was getting vaccines, if Joe Rogan would just say, go get your fucking vaccine, and half his meathead fucking audience went ahead and did it, it'd be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, I get what both of them are saying in terms of civil liberties, because I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I study this for a living. So the interesting thing is, again, kind of like with some of the other arguments, their argument is sound. It's just not
Misplaced.
It doesn't apply here, right? Exactly. So if we think about civil liberties, the whole point of civil liberties, not in a public health emergency, yes, you're able to live your best life and do your thing and go about your business. But in a public health emergency, the quintessential philosophical problem is balancing your civil liberty interests with the needs of the public. That's why, gosh, it's like a symphony up in here. That's why the tension is your ability to do what you want to do versus everybody else being protected from you. That's the tension. And guess what? In a public health emergency, your civil liberties are infringed upon. That's they are, because if you have tuberculosis, right, and you have active TB, well, you're not going to be allowed to just walk freely down the streets of New York City.
Right.
You're going to stop. So, yes.
And it's like, acknowledge what got us there. If you want to talk about your civil liberties, that's fine, but acknowledge what made us get to this point. And then you can have a discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
Between, we have to have certain laws and regulations that protect people against, overt dangers. But I also understand your statement where I think politicians and I would say lawmakers and government bureaucrats have a really hard time relinquishing control once they have it, because
it makes their job easier.
Good. Yeah.
Makes their job easier. They can just tell you to shut the fuck up, do what I say, and you have to. You can't work anymore unless you do what I say. That's essentially what a vaccine passport is.
Right.
You can't do what you want to do unless you do what I want you to do. Don Lemon was talking about that openly on CNN.
Yeah.
Wait. Don't have a vaccine? Can't go to the supermarket. Don't have a vaccine? Can't go to work.
Wait, pause it for a second. It's so weird that you can't do what you want to do unless you're not killing anybody anymore. Like that's the real thing. It's not that you can't do what we want to do unless we say it. It's unless what you're doing isn't going to kill people. And the problem is if you're not getting the vaccine, you're more likely to do it.
Yeah, John, it's like you went to public health school. I mean, boom, there you go. Like that's right. And again, his argument is a really interesting one, not during a pandemic.
Yes.
Right? That's where this case I keep talking about, this Jacobson v. Massachusetts case from 1905 with the guy who didn't want to get the smallpox vaccination. If it had just been that he didn't want to, walk down the street and chew gum or whatever.
Yeah.
And the gum was like, no, you're not allowed to do that. Then he's got a good argument. It's like you can't bother me when I'm just living my life and I'm not bothering anybody else. But then give them tuberculosis or malaria or Ebola. I mean, can you imagine if somebody were making that argument and they were walking down the street with Ebola? I have a right to be on the subway with Ebola.
Right.
You can't take my rights away. People would attack the person. They stole him in the street. So
or imagine like the dude coming back with like a I think that story was true back in the day, whatever, who went to get the fucking vaccine for the kids on a sled dog thing. Imagine he gets back and everybody's gone or dead and buried, and he's like, "What the fuck happened?" Like some dude came pounding on our doors talking about freedom and calling us pussies. So we all just let our kids run around and go back to work. I don't know. Didn't have any choice, He really got to us. He really got to us. He'd be like, I lost like 3 dogs and my pinky to frostbite. The fuck? Nobody wants the vaccines.
I think one of the worst parts about it is that people like me are kind of stuck in I don't want to lose my civil liberties, but I also don't want to get COVID or have any of my family members or anybody get sick from COVID. Right. So you get there, but
you won't lose your civil liberties. It'll only be the morons.
100%. But what I'm saying is, there are so many people out there. It's funny that it got so drawn hardline, either this far this way or this far this way, that there's so many people out there that are just like, people don't want to say this, but I am not smart enough to know decisively what is the proper decision here. So I need to pick a side one way really hard or one way really hard.
Mhm.
I can't be like, hey, I'm going to be as safe as I can while trying to maintain my business, while trying to do this. Like, people won't say that. People will just say, I believe it's this or I believe it's that. And there's so much gray gap here.
Mm.
that, like,
You know what, Tom? That's actually an exquisite point, because the balance of civil liberties and public health is just that. It's a balance, and it's not. I mean, some of it is very clear.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
if you had COVID, you should stay at home.
Yes.
But then some things are like a little more nuanced. But the part of the problem, you're right, is that people think, well, I can't sort of like either say I don't know or kind of be thoughtful about it, or sort of like do this and then be safe. And it's very difficult for people to balance it. So then it's either
it's either we're fully open to hell with a mask, or stay home, nobody should be moving at all right now.
Exactly.
And this and that.
Right.
But there is a happy medium there. Like, businesses do have to operate, but also we need to keep our population safe and healthy. Like, you got to try and do both as much as possible.
And the thing is that we could do both. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't do both. There's no reason why these business. I mean, look at every business that did exactly what they were supposed to do according to the guidelines during the first quote unquote shutdown or whatever. When they came back, they rallied. They blocked off certain street corners and made sure that there were tables outside, and they made sure curbside seating was a thing, and they all wore masks. I mean, those businesses thrived, and those businesses now still today have outdoor seating, even when they had indoor seating. So they just had more, you know what I mean? And that was was a benefit.
I mean, as somebody who's more of like a sort of intuitive type person, I mean, that to me is sort of like one of the points of the night, which is, I think some people get so stuck in the how things were.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to how things were, and we have to, get, and we talked about this, John, a little bit. We had like a really good conversation at some point with Tom, and we were talking about how happy people seem about like going, I'm so happy to be going to this and that. And are they really that happy? And I think part of it is just the want to go back to 2019. And we're Bobby Ewing on Dallas, and it's all a dream, and none of this ever happened. And we're saying now it's like a year later, and it's
good reference.
It's a big bad dream, right? So people just want to pretend like the last year never happened. But I think for people who are going to really succeed in the era of COVID, because you can, it's the people who say, not only did it happen, but I'm going to do better. I'm going to make things way more successful, safer, and more profitable. Those are the people that in 2025 will be the true winners. And everybody else is like, got to get back to 2019.
Right.
That's not going to work. So that
human nature hates change. Like, a lot of human nature hates change. Right. They want their consistency.
A lot of human nature hates change. A lot of human nature also doesn't like they like
disruption from normal. Yeah.
Which is why I believe human nature needs to be dragged through it, kicking and screaming on the other side. I mean, I'm so, when I think of everything that like these just fucking rednecks basically have held us back from, and I use rednecks as a broad term, but I hate them all. Like, I'm just
redneck.
Like,
I've been in the sun a lot.
I feel like, I mean, you've seen my watch tan. But I feel like it kills me that we don't have more stem cell research, and we can't cure certain things because of fucking religious reasons, or we can't experiment on stuff because people are like, I'm tired. This is my drawing point here, is that I'm just fucking tired of being held back by fucking morons.
Why do people want to?
Because they're dumb.
They're dumb.
They're dumb. They don't understand history. They don't understand human beings. They don't understand human nature. They don't understand the history of every single country that's ever existed other than the United States. Up until 1776, every fucking country that has ever existed was run by dictators.
Right.
All of them. This is the first one where you had elected officials. This is the first experiment in self-government that actually worked, and it created the greatest superpower the world's ever known. It created the greatest cultural machine, the greatest machine of art and creativity and innovation right fucking here. And how did it do that? It did it through freedom. Because when you give people freedom, you let people do whatever the fuck they want to do, they actually find ways to succeed and grow and thrive. But as soon as you put the boots to them, as soon as you tell them you have to do this or you can't do that, you have to listen to me, now you have a mini dictator. You have one step away from a king. You have a one step closer. You're moving one step closer to dictatorship. That's what the fuck is happening. That's what's going to happen with a vaccine passport. That's what's going to happen if they close borders. You can't enter New York City unless you have your papers. You can't go to here unless you have that. You can't get on a plane unless you do what I say. And people say, whoa, it's all about protecting people from the... No, it's not. It's not, because we've shown this is a fact. Just a couple of months ago, the idea of a breakthrough case was unheard of. Nobody heard of anybody catching COVID that had a vaccine, right? That was the whole idea. You get a vaccine, you don't have to worry about it. Now we know not only do you get it, but you can spread it.
Well, no. I mean, no, I never really, well, I mean, it's so hard to.
I feel like, I was going to say, I feel like you've talked about it before. I remember months ago you talking about the possibility of the vaccine. People like these, like I remember us talking months ago about variants and what and how this vaccine is not. We don't know if it's immune to the variants. And people keep going out and getting COVID. The more variants there are, the less likely these vaccines are going to protect us.
On our 1 year anniversary show, we watched like an old, I think it was like the first episode.
Yeah.
Wasn't it, Tom? It was like the first episode. And I was up there like, like really, now I'm just like, oh. But the first show I was like, hello, my name is Heather Betts, and I am a, but like 20 minutes in, I'm like, and we have to worry about variants because, I was watching the show on our 1 year. I was like, I was saying that the first show.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it, but I was saying it because it was a thing. A virus is kind of like, the old carbon copy papers, which younger people may not know what that is, but the old carbon copy papers or the game telephone. A virus mutates constantly. And what the virus looked like 4 months ago in Wuhan, China, obviously it doesn't look like that anymore because, months ago, it could not be transmitted from person to person. It was in animal form. So now we know that it can transmit from person to person. So by virtue of that, we know that it mutates. And that's what a virus does. And it continually mutates. So we have to be very vigilant because what this virus looks like now, it won't look like this. Tom, you remember that, right?
Yeah. If you look, we have all of them saved on the Down to the Felt YouTube, that we have all of our episodes. And there's so much stuff piece by piece. If you saw when we first started talking about vaccine, Heather clearly states this does not stop you from getting it. It does not stop you from transmitting it. It's strict. All it does is stop you getting from a severe case. That's it. Wow. So, and it's sick, but that's because we were getting our information from peer-reviewed articles. Now, here's the thing. Maybe a lot of what their information they're getting is not necessarily peer-reviewed and more news or media.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. But the notion that the vaccine was going to see that, and I remember saying this on one of our shows. I was like, all these people who got the vaccine, and the next day they're like, oh, now I can see my grandbabies. It's like, well, right, kind of. But the notion that you got the vaccine, and then 3 to 6 weeks from there, your world was just how it was in 2019. On no planet was that even the case. And so I think even the way we branded the vaccine, and I don't disagree with what he's saying there, because I think the branding of the vaccine was a fallacy.
It was sold wrong.
Right.
Yeah,
And some
I agree.
people really did think I get the vaccine and now I can hang out with my grandkids and my great grandkids and it's going to be fabulous and I have nothing else to worry about. And that was a falsehood then and it's a falsehood now. So it's not like all of a sudden the vaccine stopped doing what it was doing. It did what it was supposed to do. It just was not a magic bullet. It wasn't ever going to be the thing that was going to completely, take us out of this pandemic. And we've seen that it hasn't.
Right.
Let's get back into it. We'll try and wrap this out.
And some people have died. Apparently, it's a small number. I don't know what the numbers are, but I know that most people who get vaccinated, when they do have the disease, they have a better time of it than the people who are unvaccinated. But where are the people out there calling for people to get healthy? Where are the people out there calling for people to lose weight? 78% of the people in the ICU for COVID are obese. 78%.
I'm always fat shaming, so I don't know what he's
Where's
talking
that
about.
information being shared? Where's someone who's a leader who gets on TV and says, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to decrease our body mass. We've got to decrease our fat. We've got to make sure that people aren't over.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, it's a very good point, but contextually, you can't. What are you gonna do? Yell at the person in the ICU who's intubated to lose some weight? I mean, now we're in it, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, a lot of people. I say this. I used to say this all the time on our show too at Tom. How people enter COVID is how they're experiencing COVID. So if you entered COVID and you had diabetes, COVID's not making any of that better. If you entered COVID and you were impoverished and you were any of those things, you're experiencing COVID through the lens of that. So the notion that somebody was overweight by 100 pounds and then they entered COVID, I doubt they're all of a sudden going to go on some radical weight loss program. So then when they do get COVID, it's going to be a very horrible trajectory for them. But at that point, they're in it. So yes, that's again for another day. But that day is not today because now in a pandemic, it's very difficult to get people to start doing, weight reduction in the midst of,
it is weird that he's talking about, taking away people's liberties or civil liberties, but he's literally yelling for people to change their lifestyle. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe the guy likes being over it, maybe whatever it is, but now you're like, you're willing to scream at people to change their behaviors, their lifestyles, to work out the same way Joe Rogan does. But you're against making it so people don't kill anybody else by making them get a vaccine that has passports. It's ridiculous.
A genius point. It's a genius point because it really is. Because if we think that all of these things are under the header of public health, which they are, then you can't on the one hand say people have the right to not get the vaccine and let happen what happens. But then on the other hand, I'm going to yell at you for not losing weight because they're all public health issues. So if people have the right to not get the vaccine, they should also have the right to eat what they want to eat and smoke and drink. And we should be no more shaming them for doing that than we would for the people not getting the vaccine. Because you can make an argument that the people not getting the vaccine are in the same bucket as the people who are smoking or overeating because they're engaging in an activity that is not going to lead to good health for them. Whether or not it's action or inaction, there is still a behavior taking place that in the end will probably lead to a bad outcome for them. Because that's a really interesting area of public health. People who engage in behavior and then, this is the last thing I'll say about this, but from an ethical perspective, people who are smokers, people who drink to the point where they have cirrhosis, people who overeat, there's an interesting aspect of public health that looks at the ethics of treating people whose behavior has led to what happened to them, right? So it's sort of an ethical exercise that public health people like to go through. The not getting the vaccine is potentially is in that bucket. So if you're going to yell at people for smoking, you should be yelling at people too for not getting the vaccine because that's under that rubric of behavioral behaviors that lead to outcomes. Now, I think most of us would say, oh, well, no, if you smoke and you end up getting cancer, you should still get treatment. I wouldn't, wish that on anybody, and they should. But then one would think
But you understand what, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the risk.
Overweight. We got to make sure that people are healthy. Walk around your block. You don't have to do something complicated. Start drinking more water. Stop eating sugar. Stop taking vitamins. You can increase the strength of your immune system. We can fight things off better. We can be a healthier civilization. Better for everybody, right? You don't hear a peep. All you hear is take this vaccine that doesn't even prevent you from getting the disease, or you can't go to the sauna or wherever the fuck you want to go. You can't go to the Broadway show. It's madness.
It's not even about
it really is madness. If it was a vaccine,
the thing that's crazy is it's not. He's making it out like people are trying to tell you where you can and can't go just for the fuck of telling you when you can and can't go. And the problem is that it's not about that. It's about you can't go to the sauna because you might kill the guy next to you in the sauna just by existing. You dumb fuck. Like, it's the worst way to conflate it.
It's legitimately like he plopped himself back into 2019.
Right,
It's like he's in January 2019 having this conversation. Which again, if he were, he'd be completely right. But we're not in 2019.
And this is the same attitude, though, a lot of comics have. It's because, I mean, I like Joe, I don't understand in particular because he's very successful. He's got his podcast. He can go out. He lives in fucking Texas. He can go out and do shows or whatever. But like the middle level comedians, like desperately they think every gig's going to make them more famous.
Yeah.
Or that they're not, like their whole identity is tied into what they can post on social media and what gig they were at, whether or not they were funny, by the way. So it's like, it's not even about their craft at that point. It's literally just about the idea of being a comic, and they're frustrated that they can't go out, which I can understand, but I don't understand it from him.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, it looks like he's got like a cool setup with like what he's doing, and he's able to, so it seems like he's probably able to still like do his thing. And I'm sure a lot of comedians who are not as successful, the struggle is really real for them. So
some comedians have to blur out the background so that people don't know they're a slob.
Right.
It's rough. There's clothing on the floor in the background.
I don't know who you're talking about.
It's more of a treatment than it is a vaccine, really, if you look at it, because you're saying you need a booster now every 6 months. Look, if you get vaccinated for polio, you get vaccinated for the measles, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're good. This is not that. This is a totally different kind of thing. And it's
He's not wrong about that, by the way. I often have thought that the vaccine is more like I wouldn't say, well, I don't know if I'd use the word treatment exactly, but it's definitely 2-3 years from now, or maybe a little later, maybe 5 years from now, this is not how we're going to be dealing with COVID. There's going to be some other way that we're going to be dealing with COVID. It won't be that. But that particularly should go to the next point he should make, which is, since this is not a magic bullet, since this is not the thing that's going to like take us out of here, people should be more careful.
Yes.
Because we know that this is not the be all end all, and it's not, like foolproof and so forth, then you would think people would be more concerned. I mean, I guess if you're not getting the vaccine, I'm not sure what your option is. Is he saying don't get the vaccine and go live your life and get COVID and give it to other people? Because that's the only other option you would have.
Yeah. I don't know what his official position on the whole thing is. I think it's just like people have the choice of it's the only thing I would agree that people had the choice to do what they wanted if it didn't affect other people. But because if it does, I don't think you should have the choice to be able to kill anybody else. Like the same, like there's a great quote where it's like your freedom stops out your fist at my face or whatever it is. Like
correct.
That's where your freedom is.
That's public health. That's again, and John, what you're describing is public health. Like, I mean, what you keep saying is my life's work. What you are saying, it's my life's work. It's what I do every day of my life. It's public health. That is what you are describing. So when you say things like, It's confusing. I don't understand. You're living my dream. You're living the dream. Because I don't get it either. Because the whole point of public health is having it's basically empathy.
Yeah.
Being able to be empathetic and say, I care about other people. And even though I might not be able to go out and live my best life, I'm going to own that because I don't want to hurt my sister or my child or people I don't even know. I don't want to hurt those people. So it's a level of empathy that I think, unfortunately, we're seeing not everyone exhibit.
Right. And it's because they think they're being infringed upon.
Well, yes, but even people who are infringed upon, if they have enough empathy and enough caring for others, will say, I am being infringed upon, period, next sentence. But I'm okay with that because it will save lives. So that's where the problem is, the people who feel they're being infringed upon and want to keep continuing their lives don't add the next sentence. I feel I'm being infringed. We're all, I mean, I love that I can't go out and do the things I used to do. No, who loves that?
Right.
I don't.
Exactly.
But then my next sentence is, okay, but it's going to save lives. I won't hurt other people. I will safeguard those. That is the philosophical essence of public health. And if you don't have that second sentence, what you're saying is, I don't believe in public health. I just don't believe in it. It's not how I want to live my life. It's a utilitarian model, the good of the many versus the good of the few. Other countries actually use different models for public health. They do. Not every country believes in this utilitarian model of the good of the many versus the good of the few, but we do. That is the way that we function in this country from a public health perspective. But we're seeing in COVID that everybody doesn't believe that.
Right. Yeah. It's a shame.
All right, I'm gonna get back.
Tom's falling apart.
New kind of vaccine. The idea that people shouldn't be skeptical or nervous about that is kind of hilarious.
Well, it's kind of hilarious that people won't try on skepticism in general. Like, they need to be more skeptical. They need to push people in authority and power and hold them accountable for their words and their actions. And there's this reluctancy, I think, across the board to question power either on both sides, right? So it's like the blue likes to question red likes to question blue. But now you'll follow lockstep in party line if one is saying something or the other. That's a fucking problem. So to your point, I was reading the history of the Nez Perce Indian tribe, and I've read a few books on this just recently. I'm from northern Idaho, where the Nez Perce Indian tribe,
ferocious people, amazing
warriors.
Amazing.
Chief Joseph was an incredible leader, incredible history. But it struck me there's one chapter in the books that I was reading about how the U.S. Cavalry, they were putting the Native Americans on reservations for their protection. And I'm not trying to equate this in direct correlation, but this was part of the narrative because they were saying, we want to put you guys on reservations to protect you from the settlers and from retaliation. So we want to put you guys on this, 400 mile square reservation for your protection. And they're like, dude, we want to be free. I don't know what you're talking about. And they go in and they trace the over 1,000 miles that Chief Joseph led.
You want to comment?
But see, the problem with that is if they all had Ebola, then you know what?
Yeah.
So he again, that's a really, really interesting analogy that he used, because he's essentially saying people who had and nothing else except being who they were infringed upon. And if that was what were happening in 2021, I was walking down the street and somebody said, we're gonna lock you up somewhere just because, then that is a huge infringement on my civil liberties.
Right.
If I'm walking down the street and I just came from a party with a bunch of people in Jersey who had COVID, I don't it is very difficult for me to then say that I have the right to continue to just
Right.
bop on down the street and be around other people. That's
Yeah.
the thing that neither one of them is talking about.
And the craziest thing is that all these people that are talking on this shit right now are protecting themselves while filling people's heads with shit that's endangering them. Like Joe, Joe's got his little operation, his little base. I'm sure he's doing the shows, but he's a big enough comic where the venues that he's performing probably are taking 100% precautions. I don't know that he's having unvaccinated people at his. Again, it's Texas, but I don't know where else he's going. I guarantee you, for the most part, these people are protected.
CNN, like some of their shows, some of their shows they get 100,000 views in the key demographic, less than 100,000 even. That's crazy. Since Trump is out of office, and they don't have a boogeyman, their boogeyman is unvaccinated people. Mm-hmm. That's what they're doing. Their boogeyman is different things that they can attack.
I disagree.
Could I make a quick statement on this entire video, right? And I told you, I'm very neutral on all this type of stuff. But I think they're having a very political conversation with a medical headline. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the problem. Like, they weren't really going into depth in medical. I don't even think Rogan was trying to. It's funny because words can be distorted, right? Like, because if you're coming from a certain perspective, you could say, this is what this guy said. Finally, somebody's talking sense by taking little snippets of what he's trying to say. I think what they're trying to say is question authority. Don't let government take ultimate power. I don't think I don't know, and I can't speak to their end point in their thought because we'd have to ask them this, but I don't think I don't think Rogan is dumb enough to think that people shouldn't be vaccinated, right? I think he's just saying question authority, but people that are so far in the other direction, I'm not going to say wrong, in the other direction, or that are like, we shouldn't be vaccinated at all. They're not understanding the science. They're just using this statement from a political vantage point to back up their scientific thoughts, which none of these thoughts were really scientifically laid out. It was an article from 2015 and speculation that we could be causing that type of environment by creating this type of a vaccination. Right.
But like you said, but they're doing the question authority and the government under the blanket of the pandemic, which is not a good idea. Like, for somebody with millions and millions and millions of followers that's social responsibility. I agree, but that's what it boils down to in that, right?
For sure.
And you have an interesting point, Tom. I think so, and while I think there are some people who just kind of like blindly got the vaccine, they were like, "Oh, great! I think a lot more people did question and did wonder and did, sort of say to themselves, they weighed some pros and cons and so forth. But again, that goes to public health, because in a pandemic, there are times when you have to say, and you see this a lot with people who have the polio scars, and times when they're, even with smallpox. I mean, there always have to be these people, these sort of heroes who say, I don't know exactly if this is going to work, but I'm going to take a chance because people need to be protected. This is what we have at this point. And so again, I think the notion that people just blindly got the vaccine and they didn't think about, the risk benefit. I mean, I know a lot of people that question the vaccine, but they said to themselves, this is a pathway forward. It may not be the perfect pathway forward, but this is the path on the road to how we're going to get out of this pandemic.
Right.
And then they got the vaccine. And that is sort of the highest form of public health that you can think of, when someone doesn't know if something's going to hurt them, but they know it will protect others and they go forward with it. That is the quintessential act of public health.
Right.
And do you know who I think had one of the best comebacks in the Joe Rogan environment? He was with Joe Rogan and they were talking about it. And he's a comedian, and Bill Burr was like,
this bullshit. I'm not going to sit here with no medical degree, listening to you with no medical degree, with an American flag behind you, smoking a cigar, acting like we know what's up better than the CDC. All I do is I listen.
Oh, really? That's
funny. It's pretty great.
And he is the everyman, which he
I
was
know Bill
speaking
Burr's
very-
great to talk to you about that kind of stuff. I mean, I just think it boils down to the same thing, though, where it's like I don't mind people openly discussing, what the vaccine might do down the road, whatever it might do down the road. Like you said, it all comes down to public health and making the ultimate kind of step forward is the right thing to do. I don't think having and conflating these discussions with freedom and civil liberties is good. I think it hurts people. And I think having the discussion's fine, but I think knowing what needs to be done while you're having the discussions is,
I mean, I'll tell you and I usually don't speak on my own personal, the way I think about it, but I was in the house, locked in, not going nowhere.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I came out for the vaccine because now I have to start exposing all over the place. So instead of putting other people in danger, my family in danger and this, that, I was like, I'm better getting the vaccine than not if I'm going to have to expose. But some people just were like, nope, not doing it. And that's a little selfish. And that's what it boils down to.
I mean, Tom, again, like the two of you get what public health is.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is public health saying, I know that you could have said, I'll just continue to just stay in my house and not go anywhere. But at a certain point, you realized, you had to get out the house. So,
I have a business. I have to make, I understand the other side of that too. Yeah.
Precisely. So then how do you do that in a way that's going to safeguard others, keep your family safe? Well, right now, the way we know to do that is by getting the vaccine. So that is in keeping with public health.
Let me ask you this. If everybody was vaccinated by now, what do you think we would be dealing with?
If everybody were vaccinated right now, I mean, we wouldn't. I mean, you hate to say this, but
I know what the honest answer is. Go ahead.
Well, we would be not. We probably wouldn't be dealing. What do you think the honest answer?
You know what? Without all the degrees that Heather has, I could tell you where I think Heather's going to have to say, which is funny because it's almost what Rogan is saying by that 2015 article, that this virus is not going to stop.
Right.
It is going to keep mutating. There are going to be more extreme variants because now it's not able to get us like this. So it's going to have to mutate itself out because this vaccine does not stop you from catching it, does not stop you from spreading it. So it's going to keep happening, and sooner or later it's going to blip.
But how would we be functionally as a country if we were all vaccinated?
Right. So I think we would be in better shape because it would have also the timing is the thing, right? Because now this is not COVID-19. This is a horrible version.
Okay, then not even now, but like let's say when the vaccine came out, if everybody got it.
Okay, right. So when the vaccine first came out, we were actually still in COVID-19 land. We weren't dealing. I mean, there probably the
Delta just started, I think,
in the world, but and the variants all date back to like mid to late 2020. Okay, so they probably were trending along with the vaccines, but you have to sort of think to yourself, if more people had been vaccinated, would the coronavirus have had less places to go? 100%. Would it just had less bodies, less victims, and would the variants been able to take over as much? Maybe not. But then to Tom's point, because people are just unwilling to calm down, we're now in a tough place. And I don't mean to be super gloomy and doomy, but we got a whole population of people that can't get vaccinated now. That's kids 0 to 12, and the rates of COVID among them are 3, 4, 5 times what they were a year ago. So that's another problem, is this population which can't get vaccinated, and I'm concerned that they are going to be the next vectors for variants, because with a lot more adults being vaccinated, where's COVID going to go next?
Yep.
Populations that are not vaccinated. So I predict that what we will see after the Lambda variant, which is going to be really bad, is some sort of variant that we're going to see a huge spike in those ages 0 to 12 because they're a target-rich environment and they're the next place that the vaccine has to go. But I get your point, John. What I hear you saying is like if people had just done the right thing and gotten vaccinated, we'd be in a different place. Yes, we would be. Would we still be dealing with COVID? Yes, we would be. Would we be in a different place? Yes, we would be.
Yeah, I mean my whole point. I think that the entire time is the same thing when it all started. If people had done what they were supposed to do, if we locked down when we were supposed to, if Trump had done when he like I don't know how many times our fate needs to be weighed against these types of people, and we lose, and then we do it again in a different version, and then we lose again because of these like how many fucking times. This is why I'm for the vax passports and all the fucking best tyranny they believe is happening, because 2 times now we've relied on the dumb to do the right thing, and they're not. And now drag them out of their fucking houses. I'm not kidding. I don't know. It's a little harsh, but
hold them down and stick them with a needle.
I'm for it. I'd watch that fucking show.
It'd be a hell of a reality show, I can tell you that.
If everybody were vaccinated, the cases that were, you'd have a lot less hospitalizations. You sure would have less of that.
I agree.
And it's a tough situation.
I have to actually take this call. I know we're ramping up, but hang on one second. I'm sorry. I don't know
you didn't do it before I was gonna wrap.
All right. So
well, while he does that, me and Heather. Oh, and I think Heather. No, you didn't freeze. Thank God.
No, I'm just smiling.
Yeah, you're just holding the smile.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought this was a really good discussion. I mean,
yep.
I don't know. Don't get me wrong. Like, I am so centered that it's like I'm not too like everybody. They have to be forced, but also I think people should be educated to the point where they understand why it's a better choice to be vaccinated.
Right, and it's not a better choice because you won't have to think about COVID ever again. But It is a better choice because it lessens how sick you would get. It lessens your ability to transmit it to others. And it hopefully gets us to a point where there are less chances of variants because you are not out there with unvaccinated with COVID being able to do that. So yes. But those discussions are, again, as you said, it becomes very sort of A or B, and not a lot of nuance in terms of that.
I'm not gonna lie, I was super happy that I had to get on that set. I had to get all the tests because now I came back all negative after I had that stop in the hospital because I was freaking out. So I'm like, all right, good. I made it through that hospital weave without coming down with it across a 10-day span. So I think I'm out of the. I think if I lock in again, I can avoid this lambda.
I know. I was a little worried even going to New York yesterday, but I mean, they checked for vax and everything. But even in like, I felt better that they were checking for vax stuff and everybody was wearing comics were wearing a mask. You and I were wearing masks, and then I was still like, fuck. You knew it wasn't that not a lot of people were in there or whatever, but. Even with the checking of the masks and stuff, like at one point you walked out on the street and it was so fucking packed, and I was like, boop, boop, like even if I was outside, like just
that's how I felt in the casino or the elevators. I kept being like, oh no, you guys could go in there. I was like, I'll wait for the next one.
Yep.
And people were like, what? I'm like, no, I'll wait for the next one.
Tom's just scaling the side of the building.
I was like, where the hell are the stairs?
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm on the 37th floor.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like Rogan said, I got to walk more and drink water.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Yeah, dog, drink some more water.
Yeah. All right, I actually have to go. They wanted that was Sirius Radio. They wanted me on there earlier than later, so now I've got to go.
All right, guys.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Heather.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I'm on there. I'm like on there like twice a month, so it's not bad.
Wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, nice, good times. So
yeah, now we're live at 11.
11:15.
On what channel?
One channel. I should know this shit off the. See, Tom, it's not just our show. Channel 127.
Channel 127.
Oh, cool.
It's called Sirius XM Progress.
Sirius
check it
XM Progress. Okay.
Fugle Sang show. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Peace.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face. Have a good night, all later.
Bye.
Dystopia. Dystopia Tonight.